The tragedy in my life was the loss of a son, a grown son, age 31. That was certainly the low point of my life.
Gregory Peck was a Hollywood icon, known for his unforgettable roles and unwavering moral compass, both on and off the screen. But behind the scenes, his life was marked by deep personal tragedy that would haunt him forever. Gregory Peck's early life and career beginnings. Gregory Peck's early life set the stage for the incredible journey that would follow. Born in 1916 in sunny San Diego, California, Peck was raised in a modest household. He wasn't born into Hollywood royalty or raised with the privileges of the entertainment world. In fact, his early years were quite ordinary. Peck's father was a pharmacist, and his parents divorced when he was just a child, leaving him to live with his grandmother for much of his upbringing. But even amidst the challenges of a broken home, Peck always carried an air of quiet confidence and a sense of purpose. While most young men were figuring out their futures, Gregory initially had a more traditional path in mind. He enrolled at the University of California, Berkeley, with plans to study medicine. Yes, Gregory Peck, one of the most iconic actors in film history, was on track to become a doctor. But life had other plans. At Berkeley, something unexpected caught his attention. Theater, the world of acting, with its energy, creativity, and chance to express oneself, drew Gregory in like nothing else had before. It wasn't long before the pre-med students started questioning his path, feeling the magnetic pull of the stage more and more. And so, in one of the boldest decisions of his life, Peck made the switch. He left behind the comfort of a predictable career in medicine to pursue something much more uncertain but infinitely more rewarding: acting. After graduating from Berkeley, Gregory knew he needed to refine his craft if he wanted to make a name for himself. He headed straight to New York City, the epicenter of theater, where he could immerse himself in the art form he had fallen in love with. It was there, at the prestigious neighborhood playhouse, that Gregory's real journey as an actor began. This wasn't just about learning to memorize lines or hit marks on a stage. At the neighborhood playhouse, he trained under one of the most influential acting coaches of the time, Sanford Meisner. Meisner wasn't just any acting teacher, he was a visionary. His approach to acting wasn't about putting on a performance or playing pretend. Instead, he emphasized something deeper, something more real. Meisner believed that actors should live truthfully under imaginary circumstances, meaning that they should react authentically to what was happening in the scene rather than forcing emotions. This technique, known as the Meisner technique, would go on to shape Gregory Peck's entire approach to acting. Gregory threw himself into his studies, absorbing every lesson Meisner had to offer. He learned to dig deep, to find the truth in every character he played, and to respond to his scene partners with raw, genuine emotion. It was an intense training process, but it transformed Peck from a promising young actor into someone with real depth and presence. Meisner's influence would stay with him for the rest of his career, helping him bring authenticity and integrity to each of his performances. But the road to success wasn't without its bumps. Even with his talent and training, Gregory's early steps into professional theater were anything but glamorous. Like many aspiring actors, he faced his fair share of rejections. Some roles came his way, but they were often small parts in productions that didn't exactly set the world on fire. There were times when it seemed like his big break might never come. But Gregory Peck wasn't the type to give up easily. He knew he had something special, and with each audition, each performance, he honed his craft, pushing himself to be better, stronger, more resilient. Slowly but surely, Gregory began to make a name for himself in the theater world. His hard work paid off when he landed his first major roles in Broadway productions. The Morning Star was one of his earliest performances, a play that allowed him to showcase the depth of emotion he had learned to convey under Meisner's tutelage. Critics and audiences alike began to notice the tall, brooding young man with the intense eyes and the powerful voice. Next came The Willow and I, another Broadway production that gave Gregory more opportunities to prove himself on stage. But it was The Miracle on 34th Street, long before it became the beloved holiday film, that really solidified Gregory Peck as a force to be reckoned with in the world of theater. These productions weren't just stepping stones. They were pivotal moments in his career where Gregory began to understand the full range of his abilities and the impact he could have as an actor. The jump to Hollywood and early successes. After making a name for himself on the stage, Peck was ready to take on the silver screen, eager to bring his talent to a broader audience. The transition from theater to film wasn't just a career move. It was a leap into a realm where his performances could reach millions. Gregory Peck's entrance into cinema was marked by his role in The Keys of the Kingdom, 1944. This film was a significant breakthrough for Peck, showcasing his ability to convey deep emotion and complex characters. Playing the determined missionary, Peck brought a quiet strength and integrity to the role that resonated with audiences and critics alike. The Keys of the Kingdom wasn't just another film, it was a statement that Gregory Peck was a force to be reckoned with in Hollywood. The movie's success opened doors for him, establishing him as a rising star in a competitive industry. As the 1940s progressed, Peck continued to build his filmography with a series of notable performances that solidified his place in Hollywood. The Valley of Decision followed, a film that allowed Peck to explore more nuanced aspects of his acting prowess. His portrayal of a man caught between personal duty and moral obligation earned him further acclaim, proving that he was more than just a handsome face on the screen. Each role he took on added depth to his reputation, making it clear that Gregory Peck was here to stay. One of the standout moments of Peck's early film career was his role in Alfred Hitchcock's Spellbound, 1945. Working with a legendary director like Hitchcock was both a challenge and an honor, and Peck rose to the occasion brilliantly. In Spellbound, he played Dr. Constance Peterson, a psychiatrist working to uncover the truth behind a mysterious amnesiac patient. The film was a critical success, and Peck's performance was praised for its subtlety and emotional intensity. Collaborating with Hitchcock not only elevated Peck's status, but also demonstrated his versatility as an actor, capable of handling suspense and psychological drama with equal finesse. Another significant film of the decade was The Yearling, 1946, a heartfelt drama that showcased Peck's ability to connect with audiences on a deeply emotional level. Playing Jody Baxter, a young boy navigating the challenges of growing up, Peck brought warmth and sincerity to the character. The film was both a commercial success and a critical darling, earning multiple Academy Award nominations. The Yearling cemented Gregory Peck's reputation as a leading man who could deliver powerful, relatable performances that touched the hearts of viewers. Despite these successes, the late 1940s weren't without their challenges for Peck. Films like The Paradigm Case, 1947, and The Great Sinner, 1949, received mixed reviews from critics. In The Paradigm Case, Peck starred alongside Gregory Peck and Ann Todd in a courtroom drama that, while not universally praised, showcased his ability to hold his own alongside other talented actors. The Great Sinner, on the other hand, saw Peck in a more controversial role that tested his range and pushed him into darker, more complex territory. These films didn't achieve the same level of acclaim as his earlier work, and some critics were less impressed with his performances. However, even when the critical reception wasn't as favorable, Gregory Peck's star continued to rise thanks to the box office performance of his films. Audiences loved him, and his movies consistently drew crowds, ensuring that his career remained on a steady upward trajectory. The financial success of his films provided a buffer against the occasional critical misstep, allowing Peck to experiment with different roles and genres without jeopardizing his standing in Hollywood. This balance between critical reception and commercial appeal was crucial in maintaining his momentum during a decade of both triumphs and trials. Gregory Peck's rise to international fame. By the time the 1950s rolled around, Gregory Peck was no longer just a rising star. He was on the cusp of international fame, and Hollywood was his playground. His roles in the previous decade had laid a strong foundation, but the 1950s was when Peck truly cemented himself as a global icon. One of the first films that contributed to this was Captain Horatio Hornblower in 1951. It wasn't just another action-packed adventure film. It was a defining moment in Peck's career. In the role of the fearless naval officer, Peck embodied everything audiences loved about him: courage, strength, and an undeniable screen presence. The film was set during the Napoleonic Wars, and Peck's portrayal of the strategic and moral captain was a massive hit with moviegoers. This role showed his versatility and ability to lead a film as a heroic figure, a theme that would become a hallmark of his career. That same year, Peck took on a completely different role in David and Bathsheba, a biblical epic that further elevated his star power. As King David, Peck brought a regal yet deeply human presence to the screen. It was a high-budget production filled with sweeping visuals and dramatic moments, and Peck was at the center of it all. David and Bathsheba wasn't just about the spectacle. It was a film that highlighted Peck's ability to portray internal conflict. His King David was a man torn between divine duty and personal desire, and Peck captured that struggle perfectly. The film was a box office hit, and it confirmed what many already knew. Gregory Peck was not just a star. He was a leading man who could carry any film, no matter the genre or complexity. But it wasn't just the action-packed adventures and grand epics that defined Peck's career in the 1950s. He had a way of making every role memorable, and his collaborations with some of Hollywood's biggest stars only added to his allure. One of his most notable partnerships was with Ava Gardner in The Snows of Kilimanjaro, 1952. Based on Ernest Hemingway's short story, the film was a romantic drama with stunning African landscapes as its backdrop. In it, Peck played a writer reflecting on his life, loves, and regrets while facing a life-threatening illness. His chemistry with Gardner was electric, and the film was a commercial success. Peck's ability to balance vulnerability with strength in his character added depth to the film, and his performance stood out as one of his most compelling. Then came Roman Holiday in 1953, which is still one of Peck's most famous and beloved roles. Starring opposite a young Audrey Hepburn, Peck played the charming American journalist Joe Bradley, who stumbles upon a runaway princess in Rome. What followed was a whirlwind romance set against the picturesque streets of the Italian capital. Roman Holiday wasn't just a romantic comedy, it was a film that captured the hearts of audiences worldwide, largely thanks to the undeniable chemistry between Peck and Hepburn. Peck's role as the witty, protective, and good-natured journalist was perfectly balanced against Hepburn's innocent and free-spirited princess. The film was an enormous success, and it earned Hepburn her first Academy Award, while Peck himself received a Golden Globe. It was the kind of film that transcended borders, making Peck a household name not just in America, but across the globe. As the 1950s continued, Gregory Peck's influence grew beyond just his film roles. He was becoming more than just an actor. He was a cultural figure, a man whose presence on and off the screen carried weight. His choice of roles, often portraying men of integrity and moral strength, resonated with audiences who saw him as a symbol of decency and honor. But Peck wasn't content to just be a movie star. He was deeply engaged with the world around him. He understood the impact films could have, not just as entertainment, but as tools for shaping public opinion and addressing social issues. Throughout the decade, Peck used his platform to speak out on issues that mattered to him, further cementing his role as a public figure beyond cinema. He became involved in political and humanitarian causes, never shying away from taking a stand, even if it wasn't the popular opinion. His commitment to these causes only enhanced his reputation, making him not just a favorite among filmgoers, but also a respected voice in public discourse. Whether it was challenging the political climate of the time or speaking out on civil rights issues, Peck's influence extended far beyond the movie theaters. The 1960s and the role of a lifetime. The 1960s brought Gregory Peck to the pinnacle of his career, and it was during this decade that he took on the role that would define his legacy forever. Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird, 1962. Based on Harper Lee's best-selling novel, the film was a powerful reflection of the racial tensions in America during the Civil Rights Movement, and Peck's portrayal of Atticus was nothing short of remarkable. From the moment Peck stepped into the shoes of the small-town lawyer, you could feel the depth of his character. Atticus Finch wasn't just any role. He represented the best of humanity: kindness, integrity, and a commitment to justice. Peck brought an understated strength to the part, playing Atticus not as a hero, but as a man determined to do the right thing, even when it was difficult, even when the world seemed stacked against him. His calm, measured voice, the quiet resolve in his eyes, and the tenderness with which he spoke to his children on screen made Atticus Finch one of the most beloved characters in cinematic history. But it wasn't just Peck's performance that made To Kill a Mockingbird so significant. The film came out at a time when the United States was in the midst of the Civil Rights Movement. The country was grappling with issues of racial injustice, and the story of a white lawyer defending a black man wrongly accused of raping a white woman struck a powerful chord with audiences. Peck's portrayal of Atticus wasn't just acting, it was a statement. He became the embodiment of moral courage, standing up against the deeply ingrained racism of the time, and his performance resonated with people far beyond the screen. For Peck, the role of Atticus Finch was personal. He understood the importance of the story and the message it carried. He once said, "I put everything I had into it, and you can feel that in every scene." His commitment paid off when he won the Academy Award for Best Actor in 1963. It wasn't just a win for Peck, it was a win for the story, for Harper Lee's vision, and for the ideals that Atticus Finch stood for. Decades later, Atticus would still be regarded as one of the greatest film characters of all time, and Peck's performance would continue to inspire generations. But Gregory Peck was more than just an actor. Throughout his life, he was deeply involved in political activism and humanitarian work. In fact, long before his role as Atticus, Peck was already challenging the status quo. Back in 1947, he took a stand against the House on Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC, which was investigating supposed communist influence in Hollywood. At a time when many in the entertainment industry were afraid to speak out, Peck was unafraid. He criticized HUAC's methods, believing they violated the basic rights of free speech and freedom of thought. This act of defiance put him on the radar of some of the most powerful political figures in America. But Peck was never one to shy away from controversy if it meant standing up for what he believed in. His political activism didn't stop there. Peck was a vocal opponent of President Richard Nixon, speaking out against his policies and actions during the Vietnam War. He was unflinching in his views, using his platform to advocate for peace and justice, and his strong stance made him a target for some, but a hero to others. His friendship with Lyndon B. Johnson, who shared many of Peck's values, only deepened his involvement in political causes. In 1969, Johnson awarded Gregory Peck the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor in the United States, in recognition of his lifelong commitment to humanitarian issues. Personal struggles and tragedy. Jonathan Peck. Jonathan Peck's life began with the promise of a bright future, born into a world of opportunity as the son of one of Hollywood's greatest actors, Gregory Peck. Despite the fame and wealth surrounding him, Jonathan was a quiet and introspective soul. Unlike many in his position, he wasn't interested in the glitter of Hollywood. Instead, he sought meaning in more idealistic endeavors, a path that would eventually lead him away from the entertainment industry and into the Peace Corps. Jonathan's early years were marked by a gentle nature and a strong moral compass. He was thoughtful and compassionate, traits that would later shape his decision to serve others. After graduating from college, Jonathan joined the Peace Corps and spent 2 years in Tanzania, working to develop an agricultural syllabus in Swahili. This time in Africa had a profound impact on him, solidifying his commitment to helping those in need. He was deeply passionate about his work, embodying the ideals of service and selflessness that guided him throughout his life. However, after returning to California, Jonathan struggled to find his footing. He took a job at a Los Angeles radio station before moving on to a television station in Santa Maria. Though he was hardworking and dedicated, those close to him began to notice that something wasn't quite right. Beneath his calm and polite demeanor, Jonathan was battling deep emotional turmoil. He was often intensely self-conscious and seemed to carry a weight that no one could fully understand. His colleagues and family saw glimpses of this darker side, but Jonathan was reluctant to confront his inner demons. Despite his strong moral principles and dedication to his work, Jonathan's struggles grew more pronounced. The pressures of living up to expectations, both his own and perhaps those imposed by being the son of Gregory Peck, began to take a toll. He was deeply idealistic, and the weight of the world's problems seemed to bear down on him more heavily than most. Even though he wasn't one to party or indulge in harmful habits, the emotional strain became overwhelming. On a seemingly ordinary summer day in 1975, Jonathan's internal struggles came to a tragic head. He called his boss to let him know he was having difficulty finding stories for the TV station, but was later given a new assignment. His boss noted that Jonathan seemed upbeat and excited about the task ahead, giving no indication of what was to come. But that evening, Jonathan took his own life. He was just 31 years old, and his death shocked everyone who knew him. It was a devastating and incomprehensible loss, especially for his family. For Gregory Peck, the loss of his son was an unimaginable blow. Jonathan's suicide left him shattered, and he withdrew from the public eye for 2 years, turning down acting roles and isolating himself from the world. The man who had always appeared strong and unshakable was brought to his knees by the grief of losing his son. It wasn't just the pain of losing Jonathan that haunted him. It was the questions that followed. Could he have done more? Could he have seen the signs? The guilt and sorrow were all consuming. A life on the brink. Growing up as the son of Gregory Peck, one of Hollywood's most revered actors, Anthony Peck, known as Tony, lived a life that, to the outside world, seemed like a dream. From the moment he was born, Tony was surrounded by the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, always in the shadow of his father's immense fame. But that spotlight wasn't always easy to live under. The expectations placed upon him, simply by virtue of his last name, were enormous. Tony wasn't just Gregory Peck's son. He was supposed to live up to a legacy that most people could only aspire to. And that kind of pressure, day in and day out, began to take its toll. In the early 90s, Tony's life appeared to be something straight out of a glossy magazine. He was married to supermodel Cheryl Tiegs, a woman admired by millions. Together, they were the picture-perfect Hollywood couple, beautiful, wealthy, and seemingly untouchable. But behind that facade, Tony was far from happy. The glamour that surrounded him couldn't hide the fact that he was deeply struggling. Despite the love and support from his wife, Tony felt trapped by his personal demons, chief among them his battle with alcoholism. For years, Tony's drinking was a constant source of pain, both for himself and the people around him. It was a slow, self-destructive spiral that placed a heavy strain on his relationships. His marriage, which once seemed like a fairy tale, began to buckle under the weight of his addiction. Alcohol clouded his judgment and fueled behaviors that pushed those closest to him away. Tony wasn't just drinking to cope, he was drinking to escape, from expectations, from his own insecurities, and from the fear that he might end up like his brother Jonathan. Jonathan's suicide had left an indelible mark on Tony. The thought of following down that same dark path haunted him, even as he continued to make choices that mirrored his brother's despair. Deep down, Tony knew that his drinking could lead to the same tragic end, and that thought terrified him. He had seen firsthand the grief and pain Jonathan's death had caused their father, and the last thing he wanted was to cause Gregory Peck that kind of heartbreak again. But the turning point for Tony came when his marriage to Cheryl Tiegs finally collapsed. Losing the woman who had stood by him, despite his destructive habits, was a shock that shook him to his core. It was a wake-up call, the moment when Tony realized he couldn't keep living the way he had been. The weight of his addiction had cost him too much already, and he knew that if he didn't make a change, it would destroy him. Determined to turn his life around, Tony made the difficult decision to stop drinking and focus on recovery. It wasn't easy, and the road to sobriety was filled with challenges, but it was a path that ultimately saved his life. Slowly but surely, Tony began to rebuild. He threw himself back into his work in cinema with a renewed sense of purpose, this time free from the haze of alcohol. Sobriety gave him the clarity he needed to focus on the things that mattered most: his career, his relationships, and his own well-being. Gregory Peck's faith and spiritual journey. Gregory Peck's spiritual journey was as complex and layered as the roles he portrayed on screen. Raised in a devout Catholic household, faith played a significant role in shaping who he was from an early age. There was even a time when Peck seriously considered becoming a priest. The idea of dedicating his life to God and serving others appealed to him deeply. His Catholic upbringing wasn't just about attending church on Sundays, it was the foundation of his values and worldview. But as he grew older and as his career in Hollywood took off, his relationship with faith evolved in ways that reflected the complexities of his own life. While Peck never became a priest, he carried his Catholic roots with him throughout his life. Even as he reached the pinnacle of fame, he never abandoned his faith. Yet, his views on religion matured over time. He continued to practice as a Catholic, but he wasn't afraid to question some of the Church's teachings. Peck's faith was deeply personal. He respected the traditions and moral teachings of Catholicism, but he didn't blindly follow every doctrine. For instance, he had strong opinions on issues like abortion and contraception, and his views didn't always align with the official stance of the Church. Peck believed in the power of faith, but he also believed in thinking critically and making his own moral judgments. One of the most beautiful aspects of Gregory Peck's spiritual journey was the way he put his faith into action. He wasn't just a man of words, he was a man of deeds. His friendship with Father Albert O'Hara, a Catholic priest, led Peck to become involved in missionary work. Gregory wasn't someone who just sat in the pews on Sundays. He gave generously to support Father O'Hara's missionary efforts. His contributions weren't about public praise or recognition. They came from a genuine place of wanting to help those in need. For Peck, faith wasn't just a belief system. It was a call to action, a way to make the world a little better, one small step at a time. In addition to his financial contributions, Peck found other ways to blend his faith with his love for storytelling. In the later years of his life, he co-produced an audio recording of the New Testament with his son, Stephen. This project was a deeply meaningful one for him. It allowed Peck to combine his professional skills as an actor with his personal devotion to his faith. The recording wasn't just a job. It was an expression of his belief in the power of Scripture and its ability to offer comfort and guidance to others. Gregory Peck's relationship with faith was nuanced. While he respected and valued the Catholic traditions he grew up with, he was never afraid to challenge the Church when he felt it was necessary. He was particularly critical of the Church's positions on issues like contraception and the ordination of women, believing that the Church needed to evolve with the times. For Peck, faith wasn't about rigid rules or dogma. It was about living a life of integrity, compassion, and understanding. The final years and legacy. Gregory Peck's final years were filled with the kind of grace and quiet dignity that had defined his entire life. On June 12, 2003, at the age of 87, Peck passed away peacefully in his sleep, the result of complications from bronchopneumonia. It was a gentle departure, fitting for a man who had lived his life with such poise and strength. By his side in those final moments was his wife of nearly 50 years, Veronique, who had been his steadfast companion through all the highs and lows of his life, remarkable life. Peck's passing marked the end of an era in Hollywood, but it also brought together those who had admired not just his work, but the man he was. His funeral was held at the Cathedral of Our Lady of the Angels in Los Angeles, a grand and solemn service that reflected the depth of his influence. The service was filled with friends, family, and colleagues, including fellow actors like Harrison Ford and Tony Danza, who came to pay their respects. The eulogy was delivered by Brock Peters, a longtime friend who had played Tom Robinson in To Kill a Mockingbird. Peters' words were a touching reminder of the role that had made Gregory Peck an immortal figure in the hearts of so many. But Gregory Peck's legacy goes far beyond the films he made. Yes, he was a towering figure in cinema, with roles that defined generations, from Roman Holiday to Cape Fear, but his impact was even deeper than that. Peck had a moral integrity that shone through in every role he played. Whether he was Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird, standing for justice in the face of hatred, or a war hero in The Guns of Navarone, his characters always embodied a quiet, unwavering strength. And this wasn't just acting, this was Gregory Peck himself. He chose roles that reflected the man he was off-screen, principled, compassionate, and unafraid to stand up for what was right. His influence extended far beyond Hollywood. Throughout his life, Peck was deeply involved in humanitarian efforts. He used his platform to advocate for causes he believed in, whether it was civil rights, nuclear disarmament, or helping those in need. He wasn't just a movie star. He was a man who cared deeply about making the world a better place. His work on behalf of organizations like the American Cancer Society and his outspoken opposition to the House on Un-American Activities Committee in the 1940s demonstrated his courage and commitment to justice. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.